His captivation with the diversity, forms, and function of plants led him to study Bachelor of Science in Biology at the University of Lasal, Bacolod. He finished his undergraduate studies and he served as a research assistant in the OSTP-CHRD project. Currently, he studies Master of Science in Botany with specialization in plant systematics and a minor in molecular biology and biotechnology. Let us all welcome Sir Patrick Jason Sodusta.
So thank you very much for that fantastic introduction. Once again, good afternoon to all of you, and thank you very much for coming to this webinar. To start our today's topic, I would like to ask a fundamental question. What are ferns? Or generally, what are ferns? So ferns are non-flowering vascular plants that possess true roots, stems, and complex leaves. Unlike the roots of non-vascular plants which only functions for anchorage and attachment, the roots of the ferns also serve as an absorbing organ for water and nutrients. The reason why ferns develop to have vascular systems and enable them to grow more taller and develop complex leaves. Like mosses, ferns do also reproduce through spores, having alternation of generation. The life of a diploid fern starts with the fertilization of egg in the archegonium by the motile sperm that originates from the antheridium. This particular event requires the presence of an ample moisture. That's why most ferns can be found in moist or wet locations. Although in this illustration, it shows that the mature gametophyte possesses both male and female parts. Not all species of ferns are like this. Some are unisexual or dioecious. When the zygote develops into a mature sporophyte, bearing fertile leaves that is capable of producing spores. When the conditions are right, the spores are released from the sporangia. And when the conditions are right again, the spore will germinate with a developing gametophyte. So ferns are extremely diverse in habitat form and reproductive methods. In size alone, they range from very small, 1 centimeter, to tall, huge tree ferns to up to 25 meters in height. So some are twining and vine-like, others float on the surface of ponds, and majority of ferns inhabit warm, damp areas of the earth. Growing profusely in tropical areas, ferns diminish in number with increasingly higher latitudes and decreasing supplies of moisture. So very few are found in dry and cold places. So some fern species may grow equally well on soil and upon rocks. So while others are confined strictly to rocky habitats. So where they can occur in fissures and crevices on cliff, boulders, and taluses. In the tropics, as many as two-thirds of the ferns of an area may grow as an epiphyte on the shaded lower trunks and branches or in the crowns of trees, such as the Asplenium nidus, that we jokingly call the omnifern because it can be found everywhere in the Philippines as a popular ornamental plant. But its distribution is only restricted to some Southeast Asian countries, New Guinea, and parts of Australia. A few so-called epiphytic ferns are actually climbers that originate upon the ground and grow up in tree trunks. These lower leaves, called the barypils, are usually vegetative and are often different in form from those that are in higher levels that we call the acropils. So which are entirely or partly fertile and that they bear sporangia over their surfaces. As of 2022, the world ferns lists about 13,000 species of ferns and lycophytes of the world, but estimates had ranged as high as 15,000 because the number varies due to the certain groups that are poorly studied, and there are, of course, new species that are being found. These 13,000 species of ferns and lycophytes are mostly found in the tropical regions of the world. So Arctic and Antarctic regions possess very few species. On the other hand, A small tropical country such as Costa Rica may have more than 1,000 species of ferns, about twice as many as are found in all North America and North Mexico. The finest display of fern diversity is seen in the tropical rainforests, where in only a few hectares there can be 100 species that may be encountered, some of which may constitute a dominant element of the vegetation. In the world, China tops having the highest number of fern species of any country. But it must be noted that this high number owes to the fact that China spans one of the largest area in the world, and of course, China conducted numerous botanical explorations and researches throughout the years. In Asia, Philippines top at third place and first in Southeast Asia, having uh, more than 1,000 species, excluding lycophytes, based on the British Pteridological Society of 2020. The cost digital for the Philippines, which follows the Pteridophyte phylogeny 1, published in 2016, lists about 40 families of ferns and lycophytes, 176 genera, 1,046 total number of species, six of which are naturalized. So 269 of the uh, total number of native species constitute the 25, about 26% of the total number of ferns and lycophytes in the Philippines. So, fern-like characteristics are known to be combined in numerous fossils coming from geologic strata from early as the Devonian period, which began around 419 million years ago. So the Carboniferous period, which is 358 million to 298 million years ago, was a time of great evolutionary variation in ferns. But nearly all those groups are now extinct. So the ferns that we now know and see today are the extant groups of ophioglossids, maratoids, and leptosporangids, which greatly diversified during the late Jurassic period. So this tree represents the phylogeny of all land plants, including the liverworts, mosses, and hornworts. The number represents branch age in million years, and the sizes of the branches with leaves represents the diversity of each group of vascular plants. So as you can see, the angiosperm is the most diverse group, followed by the ferns. The entire fern group diverged around 380 million years ago, and angiosperms were actually older than some modern ferns. Therefore, ferns are not actually that primitive because some of them appeared later than some of the angiosperm groups. Only that the angiosperms were more successful in diversification and reproduction. In the relationship of vascular plants, the group of Pteridophyte is actually paraphyletic because the group of spermatophytes or the seed plants is excluded despite sharing a common ancestor with ferns and lycophytes. In this case, the ferns or the monilophytes is sister to the spermatophytes. So this is the phylogeny of vascular plants, published in PPG1 in 2016. The red box consists of all recognized groups of all pteridophytes, which contains the lycopods in red, and yellow rather, the leptosporangids in blue box, and the eosporangids in green. So the eosporangids are actually polyphyletic because their common ancestor presumably did not share the same character as them, or they were presumed to be convergent to one another. So the PPG1 of 2016 recognizes two classes, 14 orders, and 51 families. So since then, there has been several additions of these taxa. So this is the extension of the order Polypodialis, which contains the eupolypods, the Asplenianae, and Polypodiinae. So I mentioned previously the eusporangiates and the leptosporangiates. Eusporangiates refers to the large sporangiums that develops from many initial cells and produces spores. So the leptosporangiate is a small sporangium that develops from a single initial cell and produces small definite number of spores. So this is the result of the pteridophyte phylogeny 1. Again, two classes, 14 orders, and 51 families in total. So prior to the advent of molecular methods in inferring phylogenetic relationships, botanists uh, heavily relied on morphology to classify and name plant species. Through though morphological characters are not widely used in today's practice in inferring phylogenetic relationships, mainly due to the presumed convergent evolution. It's best to learn the morphology of plants for classification and identification because it's not every day we are going to extract some genetic materials. So a fertile frond has sori beneath it. So the position and pattern of sori are also used to delineate taxa. So each sori has endosome and sporangia which contains the spores, but there are some taxa with an absent endosome termed as X endoshade, no, such as this one. So the following are the important characters that must be noted in the field in order to have an informed diagnosis of the identity of the fern species. So firstly, the habit, which is the general appearance of the plant. So it is the most conspicuous aspect of the organism. So we have this species, Latserium grande, which we can describe as having a nidiform habit, meaning it forms a humus collecting nest, generally made up of modified fronds, as in the species of Drinaria and, of course, Platycerium. So another important characters that must be noted are the rhizomes and other stems. We must take note of the types, the external features such as the endomentum, the absolute position, and the position relative to the soil or water surface. So such as the above or ground below ground rhizomes. And of course the fronds and the microphyls, its types and attributes. So here are some examples of your fronds and microphyls. So we commonly encounter the pinnatifid, bipinnatifid, and tripinnatifid. So this one is called the digitate, the ternate, the pinnate, the helicoid, and the palmate. So axis refers to the main line of development of an organ. So we must also take note of that. And also the laminae and the margin, the structures and attributes. So when we say laminae, it is the expanded part or blade of the leaves. And the venation that includes the dromy and the pattern, such as the veins, which is open simple, open fork, and veins reticulate. So the sori in the indusia are very important, and they should be the priority when photographing or taking notes of the characters. So we have here the X induciate because it has no endosome. The reniform, acrosticoid, which can be found in Platycerium, the bivalve, the peltate, the linear in Asplenium, and of course the X induciate again. But take note the color. So here is the light green, and this one is brown. They actually belong to different families. And lastly, you have your falls in those shoes. And of course, the sporangia and the spores, their types, structures, and surfaces. Although you need a microscope in order to see them. So these are the important characters that must be taken with utmost attention. So if one or more of these characters are not noted, we cannot identify or diagnose species, especially belonging to the family with many species. So let us go to the highlight of the talk, the fantastic ferns and where to find them. So the first in the list is the Azolla pinnata, which belongs to the family Salviniaceae, which can be found in Africa, Asia, and Australia. So Azolla species doubles its biomass in 2 days, which so the species are also grown as a source of fertilizer because they are good nitrogen fixers with symbiosis to cyanobacteria. However, they can be quite an invasive species because of their rapid growth. So actually, we have indicated here the author of the species because there are some taxa with the same name or synonym but refers to a different type. So we can only tell which one is which by the author. And the famous Plasticerium guande and the other Plasticerium species are actually prized as an ornamental plant because of their fantastic foliage that resembles the horns of a stag. So this species is threatened due to overcollection and difficulty in germination in the natural environment. But some growers were able to mass produce this plant. It is so it is presumably rare in the wild. So when you can see one, you are actually very lucky. So it can be found in Sulawesi, Philippines, particularly in Davao, Lanao, and Zamboanga. So another fantastic fern in the list is the Anemia pillipidis, only found in the Neotropics and introduced in Sri Lanka. So there's no occurrence of this species in the Philippines. So what makes it fantastic because the fertile fronds lacks laminar tissue but densely covered by sporangia. So it appears as if it is some kind of a flowering plant. So another species that can be found in the Philippines is the Schizaea dichotoma. So the specific epithet dichotoma is derived from the Greek meaning twice cut, referring to the branch nature of the fronds. So the sporangia develops at the tip of the fronds of this species. So it can be found in Africa, Madagascar, India, Oceania, Southeast Asia, and of course the Philippines. The the Valia heterophylla is another fantastic species of climbing fern. In addition to the sterile fronds having a beautiful texture, the fertile fronds are lobed with so these characteristics makes them easily distinguishable from the fertile fronds. So the new sterile leaves are pink when they are first produced and gradually change to dark green. No, just like some species of Hoya. So it can be found in Southeast Asia, New Guinea, Pacific Islands, Philippines, especially in Palawan, Samar, Panay, and Negros Island. So technically not a fern but a lycophyte, also known as the resurrection plant. The Selaginella lepidophylla deserves a special mention because of its because it is a fantastic species due to its ability to survive in extreme desiccation. No? So during dry weather in its native habitat, its stems curl into a tight ball, uncurling only when it is exposed to water. So I'm going to stop enumerating fantastic ferns at this point because of their sheer number. So we might take forever to finish. So instead, I'm going to teach you on how to and where to find the rest of them. So in looking or finding for fantastic ferns, you must have a goal in mind. Assuming you are looking for some economically important ferns, Philippine ferns, but you are not sure whether the fern species is present in your locality or not. So, assuming you are looking for one of the species in the checklist, namely the Davalia denticulata. So, I would normally go to Cost Digital for the Philippines and search for its specific locality. So it says it can be found in Palawan and Mindanao, particularly in Bukidnon. The good thing about CDFP with that is the localities indicated are based on verified published records and other voucher specimen. However, it is not always updated, no? So we go to the next venue, which is the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, the GBIF. So this is the web page of the GBIF. So you may search your species in question, then click occurrences. Uh, yeah. So specify the country or area as Philippines if you are in Philippines. So click settings, check institution code to find out where the voucher specimen are deposited, and click locality and state province. So there you go. You can now see the extended localities where the Valio denticulata can be found. So take note that the species identification in GBIF is not always correct. So you must review the voucher specimen, noting the characters you have just learned earlier. So that's how we can find the rest of the 13,000 fantastic ferns. So the last part of my talk focuses on the researches about ferns, primarily in taxonomy and systematics. Remember that the Pteridophyte phylogeny was published in 2016, and in 2018, Fern Systematics published the separation of some Tectariaceae species into a new family, the Pteridriaceae. In their study, the Tectariaceae cinculato, or in broader sense, cannot be ambiguously recognized by any of the analyzed morphological characters. However, if the clade is composed of several genera, such as Draconopteris, Malaiphilix, Polydictyum, and Pteridris, as a distinct family, at least four morphological characters enable the distinction of this clade from its sister clade. Their analysis was also paired with molecular evidences, of course. And the family Pteridriaceae is also recognized by the Coast Digital Floor of the Philippines. But in the world, Ferns, Hassler follows the circumscription of Wang et al. 2014 and Zhang et al. 2016. Also, Fraser Jenkins et al. Of 2018 argue to keep the family uh, Pteridriaceae as a subfamily within the Dryopteridaceae. So unfortunately, I do not have access to the literature of Fraser Jenkins et al. 2018. But generally, they do not agree with PBG1. So according to Fraser Jenkins, it should be noted that the families in genera must be based on wider, more holistic, more taxonomic considerations, in addition to findings from molecular data. Speaking about more taxonomic considerations in addition to molecular data, Tan and Buo 2019 did a cluster ordination analysis of leaf architectural characters in classifying Polypodialia sensu PPG1. So the results prove that leaf architecture characters are good taxonomic tool in delineating Polypodiales. So nevertheless, as Kristen House 2017 said, where family limits are drawn is a matter of convention and taste. And time will tell which system users will find easiest to apply, which is true not just in systematics but also in other fields of sciences where results do take time to be widely accepted. Of course, in the Philippines, we have several fern studies. Amoroso et al. 2022 rediscovered a presumed extinct species, the Isoetes philippinensis, where they did a very good account of its ecology and morphology. De Los Angeles et al. 2022 also observed the diversity of the rhodophytes in the Summer Island Natural Park. So their study lists endemic and endangered species that occurred in the natural park, which emphasizes the high value of the SINP to preserve the Philippines' plant diversity. So another significant study involving Philippine ferns by De La Cruz et al. 2017 highlights the phytochemical, antioxidant, and entomoflora activities of three fern species from Bukidnon. So one of the most important aspects of the study is, of course, the identification of plant materials. So in any given aspects, plants used in for medicinal purposes must be verified to ensure the standardized results for future extraction. Hence, taxonomy in systematics as one is an important point of pharmacognosy. And to end my talk, I would like to share some of the references I use in these presentations. So, The Plants of the World by Kristen House, Fay and Chase provides a detailed account of all muscular plant families, including pteridophytes, gymnosperms, and angiosperms. They follow the latest rendition of the angiosperm phylogeny group, which is published in 2016. Though they have their own system of classification when it comes to pteridophyte phylogeny. Still, this book is a good reference as a whole. No? Then next is the Bible of the Plant Systematics, the Plant Systematics, third edition, published in 2020, accounts all systematics concept of all known plant groups. And of course, the Q Plant Glossary, which contains the term related to plant anatomy and morphology. Botany by James Mauset, and of course, a specialized glossary of ferns and lycophytes, which I also use in this presentation by the author David Lellinger. So this book is actually available online for free in the Biodiversity Heritage Library. Flora of China, although published almost 10 years ago, still contains taxonomic keys that are very important and useful, also available in ResearchGate. And lastly, I would like to express acknowledgments to the following: to Colegio San Agustin Bacolod for supporting this presentation, especially to the Department of Pharmacy, College of Health, Allied Professions, the Secretariat of the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, and all of the contributing institutions, the British Theological Society, the Herbarium of Taiwan Forestry Research Institute, especially to Tianwen Chen, and most importantly to the COS Digital Forum of the Philippines, the administrators, Dr. Barcelona and Dr. Pelser, for granting me the use of their photographs and supporting this webinar. And of course, to our fantastic attendees, thank you very much. So, not one of the resources of Fern study, but rather an inspiration for this talk. J.K. Rowling's Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So one of the excerpts that I paraphrase reads, so why do we continue as a community and as individuals to attempt to protect and conserve those species? And the answer is, of course, to ensure that future generations enjoy their beauty and potentials as we have been privileged to do. And the purpose of knowing where to find the fantastic species is not to take them away or to exploit them, but to appreciate their innate beauty and grandeur and their own habitat, conserving them for the generations to come. Thank you very much and good afternoon.